And with that, we are going to launch into the next 15 minutes. This one targeting reporters, but really anyone else who's online is welcome to join us. And one of the things that we're going to talk about here is just way more examples of how reporters and newsrooms can communicate your story to readers. We got into that a little bit at the end of the last one, but this one is all about that. So here I am. For those of you who are still with us, I'm Jean Hodges, Senior Director of Content, and with me I have Penny Reardon. Just before I introduce her, though, for anyone who's just joining us, we do have you all muted, so please drop any questions you have into the chat box. Thanks. And here's Penny, who's Director of Digital Audience Engagement, and she will take us through the agenda and some of the examples.
Great. Thanks, Jean. Hey, everyone. So as Jean said, this is sort of reporter focused, and this is expanding on this concept of trust and, telling our story better with our readers. So we do have a lot of reporters that are and digital editors that are doing this in different ways. So we're going to dive into those examples today. And also just a plug for the Digital Cafe next week. So we're going to show a lot more deep dive into this with some more language and canned responses that you can use as digital editors to dig into the comments. But these are things that you could actually start tomorrow with your reporters. So one good example, this is actually from the Columbus Dispatch on their Instagram stories. They use Instagram stories to get reader feedback. So for those of you who have played around with stories, you can do things like polling. You can do type a answer to a question field in there. And this is a really good way, particularly to engage with your younger readers, those millennials spending time on Instagram. I know a lot of folks have the news tips emails, but that's probably for folks that are going to use email first or want to send things in. But why not put something up on Instagram and say, hey, is there something that you wanted us to do a story on? Tell us. I'd be curious what some folks get there. So that's just a really good way to re-engage with readers directly on the platform. Another good example, this has really been something that's taken off this year. Reddit has expanded their media partnerships, and they're actually working more closely with newsrooms. We did a webinar with them a couple of months ago, and we can set you up actually on a Reddit as a Reddit user, as a newsroom, if you'd like. And what some folks have done is Ask Me Anything. So AMAs are a series on Reddit where folks can basically chat questions to the host or the person on the AMA. This is an example, one from the Columbus Dispatch on an investigative piece that they did, and then also from the Palm Beach Post on another investigative piece they did. So the reader questions were actually really great on this. I think there was probably a little bit of nervousness around, are we going to just get a bunch of complaints or anything, but folks were actually engaging with the content and asking questions. So any investigative work that you're doing, any series, maybe even just an ongoing topic, that you're covering in your community, why not get that beat reporter to host an AMA with your audience or within that local market Reddit community to ask reader questions. And back over to Eugene for the rest of the examples.
Thanks. Okay, thanks so much. Okay, so here are some other examples of just ways that people have shown their work. This is kind of a little bit, this is from Galesburg, and it's a little bit of an old example, but I really do like it. This was a series that they did, or not a series, but a project that they did immediately after the election. And with the project, they do this little, just a sort of a sidebar that explains how they did it. And this particular story was about just after the election, they found that only one precinct in their area flipped from Obama to Trump, and that seemed like quite a dramatic shift. So they decided to focus on that precinct, and they went door to door, knocking on doors to ask people if they had switched their votes and if they wanted to talk about it. So they got video and they did all this stuff. But what I liked about it is just this behind the story, kind of about this story that they tell, and they include it in print and online. And they basically show their work. They say, well, why did we pick this precinct? This is why. And, how did we get the data for it? And they showed that. And, you can get this data too, and this is how to do it. If you're showing your work, again, people will tend more to believe it. So it's just a really neat thing that they do. This is an example from our the wind turbine project that we did with the national team last year, and they did a really great job of doing an inside the investigation. Whenever you have really big work that you spent time on, this is something that, and sometimes people are like, well, why are we doing this? Why are we focusing on wind turbine? It's even more important with your big stories to explain them. And explain how you did them and why. And so, you can answer the question of how long did you spend researching? And they do this. They say, for 6 months, this is what we did. Our team spent time. How many documents did you pour through? How many sources did you contact? How many did you talk to? What FOIA requests did you submit? And just, again, why did you do it? I think one of the things you can do at the outset, if you're a reporter, is make sure that you're using Google spreadsheets so that, everywhere you are, you're saying, okay, these are all the documents I'm waiting for. These are all the sources that I've contacted. And those guys did that. And then it's super easy to count then how many you did. So it makes it a lot easier at the end of the process to kind of show your work. So another way to do this, and, Don talked about this in the last session, is using digital audio to tell your story. So this was something where the Spartanburg digital editor and reporter discussed a big project that they did on education, and they did it in digital audio. It really gave the reporter a chance to talk a little bit about sometimes some of the stuff that wasn't even in the story, some of his observations from talking to sources. And, it's just, again, a way of it's humanizing our reporters and helping people to understand the amount of work that goes into what we do. Again, in this session, if you see the yellow and underlined, those are links that will be live when we share this with you after the fact. And in addition to audio, you can also do video. This is a really nice edited video that Daytona did that really showed the work of reporters on big stories. They do this. They've done it different ways. When they first started doing video, and I don't know if they still do this, they had the editor talking to reporters, sort of a Q&A. It was very casual, very easy to just kind of turn the camera on and get that information from the reporter. This is a little bit more of an edited video, but it's excellent. And this was a story about sexual abuse of a child, and just talking about how they tracked things down and tracked people down. And it's just fascinating. So something that readers really do care about. And the last way that I think that we need to connect with readers is and earn their trust, as Penny said. For the last session, we spent a little bit more time talking about gaining the trust of readers so that they don't believe the allegations of fake news when people say them. But one of the things we do, and we do it really well in print, but not so well online, I think, is digital corrections. So anytime something's wrong with the story, we correct it. And why do we do that? It's not just to embarrass ourselves that we made a mistake or to say we got bad information from someone and that's why a mistake is in the story. Certainly that's what we do. But what it does is it lends credibility to us. It sets us apart from the InfoWars or the news sites that are out there pretending to be news that would never make a correction because they don't care if it's true or not. We do care, and so we do those corrections. They are in print in a consistent position in your newspaper, and we've done that for years, right? For as long as newspapers have been around. But online, how do we do it when a story is evolving? And I think that's one of the things that we need to think about. How much of a change does there need to be for us to be transparent about a correction? And I think that as the story evolves, if you're obviously making little corrections, just as you would with, editing a story, it's just that it happens live sometimes for us online, especially during a breaking news story. Sometimes we don't we're just not transparent. We just go in, we change the story, we make it right. Sometimes when we hear from people after the fact and after the story has died down, and we would do a print correction, we're just not thinking about going back into that digital story and making sure the correction is there. So it's something that we need to do online. We need to make sure we're doing it. Some people are great about it, and some people, I think, just forget. We're just not used to that workflow. What I've done here is link to a credibility card on corrections. It includes information about how to do digital corrections, and that comes from our ethics handbook, in case you aren't familiar with the credibility cards. It's just an alternative story format, ASF version of the ethics handbook. And So you can click on that and see what we say. One of the things we say is that this needs to be prominent. It really should be at the top of your story as an editor's note when it's online. And someone brought up recently a great point, which is sometimes that information can then get sucked into like social media, and it can be the thing that shows up as your chatter kind of, and we certainly wouldn't want that. If that's happening, one of the things you can do is use the fact box and just do the correction there. So there are different ways to get around it. But what we would want to do is hide it at the bottom, because we know a lot of people don't scroll to get to the bottom of the story. Sorry about that. So anyway, check out the credibility card link and be sure to get this into your workflow so that you're remembering to do those corrections online. So that brings us to the end of our sessions. We will be sending out a link to the video here and also a link to our slides. The slides are useful because you can get the live links in the slides. So those are going to be there for you. And Alan Shaw does have a question. He asks, or he says, making sure the story has summary, which is true too, will prevent the top of the story correction from being pulled into social. So we want to urge people to use summaries. This is something that is really important for SEO as well. So make sure that summary field is filled in, and especially if you have a correction. But just get into the habit of creating a summary that's not just a copy of the first paragraph, too. So good point, Alan. Thanks for that. In addition to the video and the slides, make sure that you're registered for next week, because that's where we're going to get into, as Penny was talking about, some of that canned language that can really help when you're trying to manage comments. We'll give you lots of examples there. And with that, I'm just going to wrap it up and thank Penny for her help with this, and thank Don for speaking during the last session, and hope that this was useful for you guys. And I don't think I see any more questions coming in. So I'll just say, have a great day. Wait, we have a slide for that. Thanks, and have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.